Hello, hello, everyone who's joining our IPFS meetup from across the world. We'll be getting started in 2 minutes. Looking forward to hearing from all of our amazing speakers today. If you want, in the meantime, while you are hanging out, getting your coffee, getting settled, feel free to drop in chat where you're joining from today and anything else around these IPFS meetups. Your current prompt question is, what do you like best about IPFS meetups? This is our last one of the year. We can always make them better next year. So tell us all of your favorite things so we can do more of them. Perfect. Good timing and great music choice, Jessica. I'm a huge fan. All right, it's 5 after, so we have so many things to get through today. So I figure we should get started ASAP so that you can hear from all of our amazing speakers. Welcome to everyone to our final meetup on 2020 for the IPFS project. We have a lot of presentations today. A few reminders first. Super excited to have you all here. Remember that this and all events happening about by the IPFS Community Code of Conduct. Please do check that out if you have any questions. Make sure to always be friendly and welcoming to everyone in our community. If you have any questions while people are speaking, please try and use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions so that our lovely speakers can quickly respond to anything there. We may not have time for live questions, but folks will get to you in the chat. There's a ton of these events over the past year. Please check out our YouTube page for all of the recordings. We will put these up on YouTube, lickety split. And so you'll be able to see those there if you have to drop off in the middle of things. And as always, please give us an email if you'd like to speak at future ones of these. All right, today's agenda, as I mentioned, we have a ton of speakers and they're gonna have to go real fast. So first we get to have working group updates on what they've achieved over the past year. We had a little bit of shift within the working groups themselves. So some people may be speaking for working groups from the beginning of Q1. I know that January 2020 feels insanely long ago at this moment, but we'll try and give a good roundup on all of the amazing things that were shipped across the IPFS project in the past year. And then we also have the kind of part 2 of our agenda for today is a lot of awesome lightning talks from people across the ecosystem, Textile, Pinata, 3box, Berty, and Fleek, telling us about all of the new things happening on their projects and in their corners of the IPFS ecosystem to give us a look back at all of the amazing things that happened. Today's theme is reflecting on 2020. So expect that as a common theme across all of the presentations that you will hear today. And to give you a little bit of a preview, I have a couple, I think 4 top level things and highlights that I wanted to share about kind of what I see looking back from the end of 2020 on all of the things that we have accomplished this year that I think really stand out and put the project kind of on a new trajectory as we go into 2021. So first off, looking all the way back to, I think, the February-March timeline of IPFS, a thing that we saw at the beginning of this year was a real explosion of people putting their websites up on the D-Web and making this 10x easier. Web3 has always had a little bit of a challenge when it comes to actually making it accessible to all types of developers to make use of this new technology. We really saw this starting to cross the chasm. Great work from folks like ENS, Unstoppable Domains, and Fleek to make this really accessible and easy for people to take any website and throw it up. There were new tools for uploading to IPFS. There were templates. There was GitHub integrations, forestry. It makes your life so much easier as a developer, and we really saw that that turn into many more people being attracted to this space and being able to make use of it. At the same time, we also saw some pretty cool new things being built in the web app space. And so Origin made it really easy to put up a D-Web shop, and Brave used that for their swag store. And then Opera went a step further and full-on embedded IPFS // support on their Android browser. So now you can resolve IPFS links directly without any extra installs, any extra anything. So that was a really cool thing that we saw at the beginning of this year, kind of shifting who's able to participate in the ecosystem. What we saw kind of, second part of the first quarter, so kind of the May timeline, was huge performance gains. And this had all been in the works for a really long time and was very much based on the feedback and pain points that had been being experienced across the whole ecosystem, but looking at some of the bottlenecks in use of IPFS and making large performance improvements that really put those to rest, which is phenomenal. The big focus here was content routing, or finding stuff in the network and how to make it real fast. And hey, congrats to the whole team. We did make it real fast. I'm sure you'll hear more about this from Jacob later, but we went from many seconds, can't even benchmark how many seconds it was, down to 1.5 on for our 95th percentile of seconds to find stuff in the IPFS network. So that's phenomenal and a really amazing accomplishment for this team to really take an area of pain and turn it into something that people don't have to worry about. And a big thanks for that goes to Testground, which was a new P2P network simulation tool that we were able to use to benchmark all of the improvements and protocol changes we were making, and help really drive our attention to the points that needed optimizing and make sure that it was, actually going to solve the needs of people in a large 100,000 node network, which is a big deal. Toward the second half of this year, a big focus over the past couple of IPFS releases and some of the work in libp2p land as well has been around standardization and hardening. So as you probably have seen in the release notes, a ton of new things launched within the protocol to bring us up to new standards. We have Quick by default, we have TLS 1.3 by default, we added noise across both JS and Go implementations, and this is now across all of the different implementations within libp2p, and we deprecated sec.io. So that's like a huge level up for the protocol in terms of just having really good, stable standards. And then kind of on the libp2p side, there was a big focus on hardening with gossip sub v1.1, hardening that for all sorts of blockchain use cases for ETH2 and for Filecoin. And then for the IPFS, the DHT module as used in IPFS to make that hardened against all sorts of Eclipse attacks. And finally, here, just in the past couple of months, in the past couple of weeks, we've seen some awesome protocols launching, utilizing these building blocks to make them accessible to other communities and to take them another step forward in terms of providing lots of value. So Filecoin, Audius, and ETH2 have all been launching using IPFS and libp2p in the case of ETH2 as kind of the core building blocks of their networks. And that's been super exciting to see. And we have a great time working with these communities, and we are much stronger together. So thank you so much for all of the improvements that you help make to these core building blocks so more people can gain the value from them as well. Would be remiss if I didn't give you a tiny peek into some of these year-over-year metrics. It's really cool to look back and be like, wow, this has grown so much. Just looking at the number of people who are making use of the IPFS network every week, we've seen a 4x increase in 2020, which is super cool. We now have about 2 million unique weekly users accessing our IPFS HTTP gateway, which is just one of many. So who knows how many there would be if we all compared notes. All of the many HTTP gateways that are being run from many different providers. And there's hundreds of thousands of nodes interoperating in the IPFS network every single week. And now we get to welcome a whole crew of new people who are developing the ecosystem as well, thanks to a lot of awesome events like HackFS and the Gitcoin Apollo and other things like that. We've seen hundreds of new dApps enter the IPFS ecosystem, building really cool stuff and really taking it the next step forward. So we're excited to have even more of those folks presenting at IPFS meetups over the next year. All right, quick reminder in case this doesn't get brought up anywhere else. Thank you so much to everyone who's participating in our project planning process. There are over 20, probably I'm out of date at this point because I think there's more being added every single night, but as of last counting, 27 themes submitted to the project planning process, commenting and participating in here. I think over 35 community members are participating. Come make your voice heard, upvote some of the things that you think are great for the important initiatives that we need to pay attention to. And we're going to be continuing to synthesize themes and try and pull out the most important bits, make some really hard decisions about where we can spend our time, where we have bandwidth, and kind of over the rest of December and beginning of January, mid-January, we'll try and nail some of those things down in the course of doing some of the workshops with people across the community, and then flesh out our how in probably the early February timeframe so that we know exactly what we are going to take on and deliver to folks across the ecosystem. So big thank you to Kadir and David who are helping run this process. It's phenomenal. You may hear more about it in a second, I'm not sure, but please do participate. It's been phenomenal. Cool. So without further ado, reminder of today's agenda. We're already late because I took too much time. Apologies. I will hand it off to Jacob to talk about all that the core implementation has accomplished.
Thank you, Molly. Let me share my screen. I'm going to catch us up. I'm going to go so fast. All right. We're good. So, hi, I'm going to be talking today about core implementations. Hopefully you can all see my screen. This has been a big year, as Molly kind of talked about. DHT, obviously a huge thing there, but so much else went on. Going back and just reading through the blog to see where we were at. I realized that like earlier this year, let's see, the async await refactor landed in JavaScript, which was a huge undertaking in 2019. It took a very long time, and usability there was huge for JavaScript. One of the biggest things for me personally is debuggability that helped improve. I don't know if you've worked in the JavaScript environment before in JS, IPFS or libp2p, you might have seen these like nightmare stack traces trying to debug what's going on. That has improved a lot just because of the refactor here. And what's nice is also in that part of that release of that, we did a big reflection on what does it take to do a large refactor like this? What did we do wrong? And so you can check out that blog post on big refactors there that Alan posted earlier this year, and try to avoid doing these large things in the future. But we definitely want to make sure that we're doing refactors as we go. From there, another thing, a big goal in the first half of the year was to work on developer improvement in addition to improving the DHT or developer enablement. And one of the things that JS IPFS has done really well this year is streamlining that release pipeline. So now every merge to master is in RC, so you can npm install next and always get the latest and greatest and test that out. With that, we've also really this nasty mind map of repositories going on here. Getting a feature change out the door sometimes would take PRs across multiple repositories, and those would all have to get landed together, and it was a nightmare to deal with. We've really coalesced a lot of that to make it easier in the IPFS repo, and now we've kind of been able to release a lot of those dependencies all together, kind of moving to a mono repo for all of those things that don't really make sense to be separated. Then DHT and bit swap improvements. So really all of this stuff from 0.5 through 0.7, so much work went into this. We'll kind of talk about the DHT performance improvements a little bit more, and then bit swap as well. But this was a huge undertaking that took a good part of the first quarter, well into the second quarter, and then we've had a trickling of updates since then. So talking a little bit about the DHT and bit swap improvements. So the DHT, right, was not very performant, and I'll kind of walk through some of these initial metrics here. So what we did is we got together with Testground. As Testground was being built, we were kind of doing these things in parallel, which was really huge. And here you can see kind of some of the Testground benchmarks that we put in place. So these aren't based on the live network in this. This is everything that we've pulled directly from Testground. So we've had huge gains in Go from IPFS 0423 to IPFS 0.5, and it's continued to get better. Such significant improvements there. So a lot of work, a lot of benefit. It's been really great. Looking at these find times over time, like finding content on the network. So we go back to IPFS 0423. It's probably hard to see here, but in the 95th percentile, our find times were at 45 seconds. And so this was like, we were running this, our metrics are being collected on the live network. What we do is we have a cron job where we will spin up some nodes, we'll provide some content, we'll query the content, and this is where this is coming from. This is coming from the live network. We're not pulling from other people's queries at this point in time. Because privacy, yay. And so in IPFS 0.5, it was a huge gain coming from 45 seconds to an average about 5.4 seconds week over week. In 0.6, as we continue to make like tweaks and improvements, and as people just upgraded the network, like the big gain here from 0.6 to 0.7, going from 5.4 to 3.8 to 1.5 seconds, like we're seeing pretty consistently 1.5 seconds and 100% success in find time. This has just been because people are upgrading from 0423 to 0.6 and 0.7. So tell all your friends, upgrade, get the latest. Bit swap improvements also, as part of a collaboration with Netflix, one of our engineers, Dirk, was working with them to work on transferring data within their transferring containers around. And so we worked on bit swap improvements to improve the ability when you have multiple seeders. So here on the left, you can kind of see some graphs of the various levels of previously in master, which was our old bit swap, and then the POC, which is now live. You'll see that when you have more seeders, it's now much more effective, which is really, really great. And additionally, in JS/IPFS, like such big gains there in data transfer speeds. Like you're looking at, over 50% gains in throughput there for just doing some small tweaks. So really great stuff. Molly talked a bit about hardening. This was a big focus this year. Obviously, large networks, ETH2 launching this year, Filecoin launching this year. Like it's very important for these networks to have a lot of integrity. And so with that, we took two endeavors here. One is Gossip Sub 1.1. And so we spent some time, a lot of thought went into this with the libp2p team, our research team, working with our collabs to figure out, what do we need to do to make this hardened and secure on the network. And so working with Testground again to test out attacks, go through various hardening techniques. You can read more about it in the blog post. A lot of improvements there, and we were able to land that in both Go and JavaScript, thanks to the folks at ChainSafe landing in JavaScript. So that's huge wins there. For the DHT hardening, you can kind of read about this blog post, but some researchers reached out earlier this year and was like, hey, we found some vulnerabilities, and we collaborated with them for the 0.5 release. Like it actually used to be fairly easy to eclipse a node and evict people from the routing table. Now that's significantly harder. Again, we leveraged Testground to do this, and we actually ran some 24-hour attacks against some of our own bootstrap nodes without any consequence, low eviction rates. It's been really, really great. So awesome stuff there. Then noise, quick, and more. So yeah, we replaced SecIO with noise. Noise is in all 7 implementations of libp2p. It's the standard protocol for the ETH network as well. Big wins there. Switching over to quick has saved us in round trips, which is why you're seeing additionally some improvements there in the DHT query times, just reducing the amount of latency that we have in backbone connections. And then a whole slew of other stuff, custom DAG formats in JS/IPFS. You can now peer nodes in go-ipfs, which has been super valuable for clusters. And then last but not least, something that we're working on right now, JS/IPFS has already released this pinning improvements. So moving pinning into the data store out of the DAG, you can see here kind of in this graph of where JS/IPFS used to be, this blue line on top. The more pins you have, the slower and slower it gets. Go-ipfs is the yellow line in the middle. After the fix, JS has been level. And the go-ipfs 0.8 RC is out. It just launched this week. So if you want to test out the pinning service performance, please do. We would like to make sure that is fully functioning before we fully release, make sure everything's good to go. We've done testing on our end, testing out our services. We want to get as much testing there as possible. And then I think Lyda will probably talk about this a little bit later on, but remote pinning services are going to be landing. And this is going to be really valuable for people who want to leverage services like Pinata or Infura to be able to offload, say, hey, can you hang on to this for me? You'll be able to configure remote pinning services in go-ipfs, and JS/IPFS will also be releasing with this. And what that'll let you do is those services can then pin it on your behalf, and you can do that directly from the IPFS clients. So again, this is in the go-ipfs 0.8 RC, so feel free to play around with it. And I think that's it. Don't forget to update. Don't forget to upgrade. When 0.8 comes out, upgrade. And thanks, everybody. And I will hand it off.
Thanks, Jake. So many amazing things that were shipped this year in the core implementations. You may recognize me from previous meetups. Am Dietrich Ayala. I work on the IPFS team, the lead for the ecosystems working group. You may know us from a lot of different things that you see around the project, and you see in events like these. And I'm going to talk to you for just a couple of minutes about who we are, the things that we're doing, some of the big things that we shipped this year, and what we're going to do next. So these are some of the faces of the people that are behind events like this, blog posts that we write, other events that we put on around the community, a lot of the work that you see when you see us moving GitHub repos around or landing support for integration with other developer libraries or publishing research or doing things like the annual 2020 planning that Molly talked about before. That shot from restaurant obviously is from earlier this year when that was a thing that we could do. And a lot of new people on the team this year that sadly we have yet to meet in person, but work closely with together all of the time. And you see the fruits of their work in front of you every day as the project runs. Some of the areas that we work on in the ecosystem working group, things like community development and engagement, contributor experience, documentation, all the events that you see, IPFS participation in events and some of the content that we do there when we do things like fix websites or plan new versions of websites. That's also some of the folks on ecosystem and related teams, and also figuring out what are the things that we're doing actually achieving the goals that we have? Are they having the impact that we want to see? Metrics and our tracking of success of some of these efforts are areas that we work on. It was a big year, even with all the other things going on. We did a lot of things. In the first half, we had a bigger team and took on a number of big initiatives that I'll talk about in a few minutes. And second half of the year, really focusing in on a few different project operational things, as well as helping out a number of other projects and helping out with other launches that were happening in our interplanetary stack. The first half of the year, we actually had a super group. We had 3 different smaller working groups rolled up into one mega ecosystem group where we did a bunch of things that you may recognize that Jacob talked about some of these before, like the JS IPFS monorepo work, making it easier for developers to contribute. Fewer PRs per change was one of the goals there that we achieved. We joined at ETH Denver and saw a bunch of you at the IPFS and Friends event the day before, organized by the Cryptorado community. And we've shipped major things like IPFS docs that quarter, as well as things like the Opera Android that integration that Molly mentioned. Second half of the year, we had a smaller group that went in into other projects, really helping accelerate and amplify the work there, be able to launch things like docs in DRAND and Filecoin, doing developer research, understanding what are the challenges that dApp developers have in their journey in developing IPFS-based applications, working with different collabs who are already building on IPFS and helping them understand what Filecoin can offer, as well as new things like integration with more browsers. One of the big areas that we focused on was developer experience, making it easier for us to develop and maintain IPFS, making it easier for you to contribute to IPFS. We did that in a number of different ways: docs, research, content, and developer ergonomics changes. In content strategy and websites, we overhauled the newsletter. We got a lot of great feedback from the people who, I think we missed one and immediately heard from a bunch of folks how important that is for people to be able to keep up with what's happening in the wide world of IPFS. Things like an audit of the entire ecosystem of content we have. How many websites do we actually have? That's a thing we know now, and we know which ones are used, which ones are really important, and which ones we need to be able to keep content fresh and up to date on for your needs. Overall, community health, be able to see with the ecosystem dashboard become a tool that we used regularly and still lean on pretty heavily today to understand how things are going in the overall IPFS community, making sure that we're responding to the issues that you file. As you can see here, we measure our response time to every issue that you file. We also did a number of things like bots to be able to know when new posts happen on Stack Overflow, Hacker News, and the forum to make sure that people are getting a response and understanding the full forest level view of our ecosystem. For metrics, we're measuring a number of different things in both network, the community, developer engagement, and a bunch of other areas to make sure that the work that we're having is having an impact. And we also go all over, well, not physically go, we now virtually go all over the place still. We had a bunch of different events this year. Consensus Academy, we did a course there. We transitioned from the weekly Monday meetup to these monthly virtual meetups as one of the efforts of this group this year. So thanks for joining us here today. And the other events, external events, we were at Paris Blockchain Week this week. We participated at Distributed Camp and Regular One and a bunch of other different events this year. We also work on the Collabs and Grants program. So managing the relationships that we have with big IPFS users and making sure that we understand by interviewing them periodically, understand what their needs are, making sure that their PRs and changes and protocol changes are happening, and working with grants to be able to fund and accelerate some of the big changes that we want to see in the IPFS ecosystem. One of the big things that we announced last week was Brave Nightly having support for a full IPFS node. That's going to happen in January in the release channel. So expect more announcements and communication there. But that's the wide spectrum of what IPFS ecosystem does. Thank you very much. And now I will hand it off to, who is the next work group?
It's me.
Hey, everybody say hi to Lytle.
Hello. So just make a quick audio nod if you can see my screen, just double checking.
All good.
Cool. So web browsers and GUI working group. It's interesting context here. We've been either web browsers working group or a GUI working group, and now we are web browsers and GUI working group. So the work here happened across 2020. It's been under different working groups, but we clustered them together. And I'll give a quick overview of IPFS on the web first. So the most important thing that happened to IPFS ecosystem browser-wise, in my opinion, is subdomain support on our gateways, working by default on our canonical public gateway, on a localhost gateway. It's important because now we are fully compatible with the security model on the web. Each content route identified by a CID gets its own secure sandbox in a browser out of the box without any third-party extensions. It's just how the web already works. And we now aligned our security policy on the web with how browsers work. So each content route gets own cookie store, permissions are scoped to the specific content route, storage. That solves also a huge developer experience pain that people had with static website generators using relative paths. All those problems go away. And the cool thing about subdomain gateways is that it's a drop-in replacement. So you can use them as a path-based ones, and you will get redirected to the proper subdomain. In a web browser context, additional pain point was resource usage. People have had problem when they wanted to use JS IPFS in their website for multiple contexts, maybe across the tabs or maybe across different apps within the same origin. It's now possible to reuse the single IPFS instance across different browser contexts. Mostly that will be within single origin across tabs. However, you may use those NPM modules for passing and delegating IPFS commands from different browser contexts other than the regular browser. We've also improved browser import over HTTP API. It's important because a variety of HTTP-based deployments exist in production right now. And there was a ceiling on how big of a file you are able to import over HTTP API. Now that ceiling is gone, you can import huge files, 4 GB or more, on devices with a little memory without any double buffering. And additional perk of that is that of that work that happened this year is that you get a real-time progress on those uploads when you do IPFS add over HTTP API when you use IPFS HTTP client, and that already shipped, so feel free to play with it. And now will be a bunch of important firsts for IPFS in web browsers. So the first time the IPFS URI was resolved by a mainstream browser happened this year. Opera Mobile shipped support for IPFS URI. You could enter it in the address bar and it would resolve to a public gateway. It's a mobile client, so it was backed by a public gateway. Nevertheless, it's a huge milestone to have out-of-the-box support for our URI in a mainstream browser. And shortly around that time, Brave was the first browser to include one-click install of our browser extension. And a part of that work was also blessing our browser extension with access to TCP and UDP sockets, which meant Brave was the first browser to have a full IPFS node running in a browser process. It had a built-in HTTP gateway. Was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, Google deprecated some of the APIs that we've used for these experiments. So we switched gears, and for the second half of the year, we looked into a way to provide native support in Brave that does not require running any browser extension. So Brave is the first browser that has URI support that's backed by a full IPFS node. So the first time you load IPFS URI in Brave nightly, it will ask you, hey, do you want to run IPFS node, or do you want to resolve this IPFS resource using a third-party public gateway? And it works. So it's super exciting because it landed in Brave nightly, just like folks on the previous talks mentioned this month, and you can play with it. It will probably be refined, so it's not the best UX right now, but it will be much better when it ships in, hopefully January. Huge milestone, URI and full IPFS node in a web browser. And we did not stop on with that. We want to make it useful across all vendors. So we started a partnership with Igalia, Igalia are a dev shop responsible for such useful web platform features as CSS Grid. So we've been working with them on known problems that are protocol agnostic, that would, if fixed, would benefit everyone, but also would remove any roadblocks for IPFS presence in the web platform. And we focused around our first collaboration around Protocol Handler API and identified a bunch of roadblocks toward adoption of our URI schemes. And now, at the end of 2020, URIs are officially recognized by international standards bodies, are safe listed in Chromium, so you can register them without Web Plus prefix. And we also unified behavior of localhost gateways across vendors and browser contexts. So it's ongoing work, but patches already landed in Firefox. And you can see here, when you load DNS link website from a local gateway, it's marked as a secure context. It's a huge deal, which means DNS link websites loaded from your local IPFS node behave the same as you would load them from the old school HTTPS server. And you got access to all web APIs. So that's a huge deal, and we'll be continuing collaboration with Igalia going forward. Pinning services API spec landed. And just like mentioned by the core implementations working group, this is a step towards enabling people to easily delegate data persistence to a third party. We are working with pinning services, existing pinning services, and we hope to see more of them to implement this API. The support for this API will also land in go-ipfs 0.8, and in the future, hopefully in the beginning of 2021, it will land in Web UI and IPFS desktop out of the box. So be sure to play with it when you see it landing somewhere. And during the year, we've improved our end-to-end testing, release automation. I'll just keep it brief. So Web UI is now tested against go-ipfs and JS-IPFS in the CI process, so we catch any regressions early, and IPFS desktop, including signing for macOS and Windows and notarization. All that stuff got automated. So you may see our team be able to deliver more features because all this stuff got automated and no longer will take our time. And I believe now it's time to talk about IPFS GUIs.
Speaking of IPFS GUIs, we could talk about the changes that we made to IPFS GUIs over the last year, but it would take about 45 hours. So we're just going to run through a couple of the highlights. Revamped IPFS Companion. We made so many changes to Companion this year, which is awesome. Reworked all of the prefs. That made a huge difference, but added new menu items for shareable snapshot and IPFS path links where those are appropriate. So those appear in the menu. You'll see that in the animation. Really just streamline the UI everywhere. There's a more useful welcome screen. You can get to that by clicking the cube in your browser drop-down menu. Also added manual opt-in and opt-out lists in prefs. You can still do this on a per-site basis with the toggle, but you can also do that straight from prefs if you just want to paste in a big old list. The prefs get their own easier to use page that's consistent across all browsers. And we also fixed the peculiar but extremely annoying case where you had error messaging in Firefox specifically, which forced lowercase CIDV zeros when you paste them in. So we gave Companion a very specific error message indicating when you might have done that. Next slide, please. And really just onboarding improvements galore. I mean, that sounds sort of glib, but for real, we spent most of our focus in 2020 doing things that were going to make it easier to get started using IPFS, no matter what your intent was with IPFS. So that focused on a lot of onboarding enhancements to anything that was IPFS that has a GUI on it. In particular, web UI and desktop. Lots of accessibility improvements across the board, better map and table data on the peers page. And we've also got some more peers page improvements that should be hitting early in the new year, just as soon as we wrap those up. CLI tutor mode, which was actually given to us by a wonderful community contributor. So if you want to learn the CLI through IPFS desktop, there's some shortcuts for that, better breadcrumbs with drag and drop and all sorts of other good stuff. And then just lots of other little bits of UI happiness. Also improve the gateway directory pages that you'll see anywhere and everywhere that you use IPFS through a gateway. dist.ipfs.io is easier to use, also works on your phone, and like so many more other things. Next, please. And this is sort of boring, but it's actually really important. We started coordinating issue tracking across 13 GUI-related repos, which means that we've got both a better tactical response to things that break or change, as well as a better strategic response. We had a 48-hour maximum response time on all new issues, a weekly triage for a synchronous triage so that we made sure nothing fell through the cracks. But the really good thing about this is coordinating all of these repos together at once gave us visibility into the most important work streams for 2021, such as the next slide, please. This is going to be so cool. And it's coming very, very soon, is full pinning service support in desktop and web UI. So this is the pinning services API baked into web UI and desktop. So you can add any pinning service that uses this pinning services API. You can use web UI and desktop to pin files to your local node, your pinning services of choice, or both. There are nice little indicators in the file screen so that you can know what is and isn't pinned. And future releases, soon, TM, will include some rules-based auto uploading, which is going to be super, super convenient. I could tell you so many other things, but I think I would get yanked off the stage. So just a big old shout out to everybody who helped us this year, and look forward to 2021.
The suspense is killing me.
Hello,
This is
everyone.
George.
Yep. Let me start sharing. All good?
Looks
Yep,
lovely.
all good.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is George. I work on the IPFS team. I'm the lead on the IPFS infrastructure team, also affectionately known as Bifrost. The core team is made up of the three of us, myself, Michael Burns, and Tommy Hall, but we've seen many contributions from more people who I listed below. The biggest, probably the biggest accomplishment for our team this year has been keeping up with the ever-increasing requests, uniques and data flowing through the gateways. we're sort of a victim of our own success, because we quickly realized that just spinning gateways on bigger boxes results in more people using the gateways. So we've had to pause a little bit and see what other knobs we can tweak so that we don't have to just keep spinning up bigger boxes. Just to give you an idea of our gateways, we run in 9 regions via BGP Anycast, which means we serve the same IP address from multiple regions. We do deploys via Terraform and Ansible. We use OpenResty, which is Nginx plus Lua for scripting as a reverse proxy in front of go-ipfs. All the gateways have an 800 gigabyte hard drive for caching. And our observed SLIs are around average 150 milliseconds time to first byte and 99.97 uptime for this year. We've accomplished these numbers by applying lots of tweaks to the go-ipfs garbage collection thresholds, OS level tweaks, routing tweaks. For example, we noticed recently that having nodes in the Frankfurt region basically made most of the traffic get sucked into that region. So it wasn't great for user experience because we would get users from like Asia hitting Frankfurt just because they were closest to that region in terms of network hops. So we've since distributed the load better. But yeah, we've seen a 2x increase in unique visitors and in gateway traffic. Another thing that we maintain is a list of bootstrappers. We've scaled from 7 nodes to 12 nodes. We've also switched from using static IPs in the go-ipfs configs to using DNS adder suffix matching. And the way that works is when you resolve dnsadder.bootstrap.ptp.io, you get a list of peers, which are also DNS adders. So if you recursively resolve those, then you get multiple ports, multiple entries for the same peer, but describing other protocols. So you can easily have it like a nested way of describing multiple peers from the same DNS adder, top DNS adder. This allowed us to easily add support for WebSockets and Quick. Also, we've spun up an IPFS collab cluster. This is a 3-node cluster, 80 terabytes each, so lots of room to grow there. It's currently hosting a bunch of PL websites as well as Filecoin parameters, which are some of our multi terabytes. As far as monitoring, we didn't have a lot going in. We just used like plain old SSH to log in and tail logs. So we've since instituted a monitoring pipeline. We use Prometheus for our metrics, for machine level metrics like overall memory usage, network, CPU usage. We use Node Exporter. Then go-ipfs itself provides metrics in the Prometheus format. So we get all sorts of good info such as number of peers, bit swap stats, quick stats, all sorts of very good things. And for the HTTP proxy, which is OpenResty in this case, we use mtail to parse the logs and expose the percentage of requests, of successful requests, failed requests, and so on, which we use to alert on and also to graph in Grafana. We also use Pingdom and Raintag for global uptime checks. That is how we got that 99.97% uptime. Some things that we would like to work on in the next year are obviously keeping up with increasing user demand. That mostly means scaling IPFS instances and working closely with the go-ipfs team in identifying memory leaks or tweaks that we can make. We would like to make our repos public. We've basically extracted most of our secrets from the repo. So at some point we would like to make that open source and start accepting contributions. Also, a big one has been streamlining DMCA requests because we've been getting lots of those. So we actually have work to enable a double hash deny list that can be easily shared with other gateway operators, which would be great do at some point. Also, we have to find better ways of testing configs before deploying to all of the gateways. Right now, we have staging boxes. We do canary deploys to them, but sometimes some things are still not obvious when they break. So we would like to have a sort of a better approach to testing these before they hit live. And also, we would like to experiment with running IPFS on Kubernetes at scale. The nature of the Kubernetes networking layer makes it challenging, but if we solve that, it really makes up in terms of orchestration across multiple regions. And that is it for me.
Thanks, George, for the update on and really giving people a view into what we run from infrastructure, how we operate, and also where they're going to be able to contribute as well. So that's it for the working group updates from IPFS. Thanks everybody, working group leads, and all of the teams, these working groups for the work this year to be able to push IPFS forward, make it meet all of the project's needs, end user needs, and be able to keep this network alive and growing. Next, we're going to move on to some words from some of the projects that are building on IPFS this year that have done some big things this year, and we want to be able to highlight their work on the project, their contributions to the project. So I'd like to hand it off to Carson from Textile. Or Andrew, I see both of you here.
Here I am. Sorry, technical difficulties here. I do have a couple of slides. I think I got 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to do that. Can I do a screen share? Okay, you know what? I'm just going to share the whole thing. There we go. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
That's a yes. Okay, right. So in putting this together, we realized that really don't have enough time to get through all the stuff that happened this year. So we, at the beginning of the year, we set out a pretty, broad goals of more time on community initiatives, more conferences, more launches, more ideas, more collaborators, more collaborations, shipping more stuff and more stuff. And so we spent a lot of time focused on shipping new products, and it's kind of amazing all the stuff that we got done. So we kind of shipped all the things this year. We did a bunch of new updates to our ThreadDB protocol and database, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some newer stuff towards the end here. We implemented a bunch of new access control mechanisms for developers who are looking to leverage Web3 technologies with Web2 access control constraints. We launched a new mailbox API that is really making it a lot easier for people to do things like share invites between threads, but also share invites between different Web3 protocols in order to sort of tie a lot of different tooling and tools together. We launched our buckets APIs. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. We launched a bunch of stuff around Filecoin. We launched some new community initiatives and all the things. So speaking of launching products, we put a bunch of effort into our Textile Buckets API. So for anyone who's not already familiar with things that Textile does, we build a lot of developer tooling on top of the IPFS ecosystem in general, specifically, and the Web3 community and tooling more broadly. So Textile Buckets is a file and dynamic directory storage that's built on top of ThreadDB, which is our dynamic thread event sourcing layer. It ties together a bunch of Textile tooling, like our PowerGate API, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and then standard IPFS things like Unix Unix FS and DAGDB and all, or DAG structures, so that you can share data on IPFS in a really clean way. It publishes all this over everything you can think of, including HTTP, IPFS, libp2p, IPNS, and all the things. And it's really easy. So that's the name of the game here when we're talking about stuff. Of course, 2020 was the year of Filecoin for us and a lot of other teams. And so we shipped a very exciting new product we call PowerGate, which is a multi-tiered storage API. And it's built to leverage any of that gap between IPFS and Filecoin. It lets you, build indexes for Filecoin data. It lets you push data to and from Filecoin for retrieval and for storage. It's designed to be used by other teams. It's designed to be used by pinning services, which is going to be a big thing in 2021, I think. And it's really designed for teams building services on top of Filecoin. The coolest thing, of course, is it's pretty easy to use. So if you even are just sort of Filecoin curious, I recommend you take a look at PowerGate and start playing around there a little bit. All of our tools now and continue to be supported by across a number of different languages. So if you're building a Golang app, you're building something in JavaScript, you're building with Python, we have community contributors who built API wrappers and connectors in all of these different languages, and everything's available over gRPC. So even if you've got a language there you're not that's not covered already, you can jump in and start building stuff pretty quick. We've done a lot of focus this year on community outreach. In fact, we set a goal for ourselves to actually contribute directly to external projects as much as possible. One of those has been a handoff of something we called JS IPFS Lite to the IPFS core team. I actually talked about IPFS Lite in a prior meetup. So that's now become JS DAG service, and that's something we've given back to the IPFS community. I'm going to start to try and promote that a little bit more in the new year and hope that we can get some contributors over there as well. And then, of course, we have a lot of, speaking of community, we have a lot of interactions with other teams, including folks from Fleek, from Memex, from Slate, from the Filecoin core team and Protocol Labs and Ceramic and a whole bunch of other teams that we're really excited to continue to interact with and to do a bunch of integration. So expect a bunch of really tight integrations between groups like Fleek and Ceramic and Slate in the coming months and quarters. And please do check out those projects, because without those teams, they help us to drive API development, they help us to drive features, and they help us to pick what we ship. In order to ship all this stuff, we've also had to do some hiring. So we're very excited that we've got 2 new members that have joined our team pretty recently towards the end of 2020. And so Textile team, in addition to growing our product space and our tooling and all of our community outreach, we're also expanding our team locally. And so please, give them a warm welcome to the new team members, and hopefully you'll be interacting with them a bit more in the new year. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to take up more than my fair share of time. Thank you very much. Please ping me afterwards if you want to know any specifics about the stuff that we did. It was really tough to pick what I was going to put in this set of slides and what to leave out, but I think that'll give you a quick overview. And for anyone who's not familiar with Textile already, what's going on? Aren't you paying attention? And if you're interested, just check it out, textile.io. Thanks.
Thank you, Carson. Great to see all the growth that Textile is having this year, and participation in so many parts of the ecosystem, and really the really important projects, things like what's happening with JS IPFS Lite, super exciting. So next we're gonna hear from Pinata, Matt and Kyle. Welcome.
Let's see. Great, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Kyle Tutt, and we have Matt Ober as well, co-founders of Pinata. We are the easiest way to use IPFS, and I wanted to thank the Protocol Labs team for putting together this great meetup to celebrate another successful year in the IPFS ecosystem. And I definitely think we can say that 2020 was a successful year for IPFS. It's great to see amazing teams like Textile, 3Box, Berty, and Fleek push the boundaries of what IPFS is capable of, and then gain, mainstream adoption. When Matt and I had started Pinata in late 2018, we had this belief that IPFS would be adopted more and more by applications that understood its unique value proposition. So it comes with no surprise to us that this ecosystem is thriving, supporting more and more teams like the ones mentioned earlier and bringing in users at an amazing rate. We look forward to continued success for IPFS as we move into 2021. As for Pinata, our year tracked very similarly to the IPFS space in general. We will end the year with more than 8,000 developers and creatives building with Pinata, and we had a 1,700% increase in pins on our system, which was amazing to see. The developers and creatives building with Pinata are split almost perfectly, 50% crypto focused and then 50% non-crypto focused. On the crypto side, DeFi applications and NFTs use Pinata for its immutable content address pins, while on the non-crypto side, we have websites, videos, and more choosing to use IPFS to deploy and share content easier. From a product standpoint in 2020, we stayed true to being the easiest way to use IPFS. Throughout the year, we spent a lot of time behind the scenes, implementing improvements to make sure that our infrastructure was fast and reliable. At the end of the day, all of the growth IPFS has seen in 2020 means it has to be able to scale more and more, and we're always happy to tackle those challenges. In March, we released regions and replications, which allowed our users to replicate their content on IPFS nodes multiple times in multiple different regions. This gave our users better control to add speed and redundancy to whatever they were pinning. And then we spent the rest of the year working with our users trying to figure out what was most important to them. So through that discovery process, we found the biggest complaint our users had was the fact that we only had one API key and one API secret. So tonight at 11 p.m. Pacific time, we will be releasing our new feature called Scoped API Keys. This will allow our users to revoke keys, add permissions to keys for specific endpoints, limit the number of times a key can be used, and allow you to name keys for easy reference. Scoped API keys pave the way to an abundance of new opportunities for developers. Keys can be scoped to individual users of your application. They can be scoped to specific functionality you want to unlock. They can be issued on the fly for quick one-time access to features. There are so many things you can do with these scope keys, and we really can't wait to see what everybody will build with it. On Monday, we'll release a more in-depth blog detailing what we think is possible with our new Scoped API key feature, and then over the coming weeks, we will release tutorial blogs detailing examples. Again, we can't wait to see what you build with it. Moving into 2021, we will maintain our focus on speed and reliability at scale. We recently hired 2 new members to the team, Justin Hunter, formerly of Simple ID and Graphite and a bunch of other cool stuff that he's built over time, and then Justin Ehler. I won't detail out today what we have planned for them to build, but we expect to create easier and easier ways for applications to build with IPFS at scale. And so with that, I want to thank Protocol Labs and the IPFS community for continuing to be the best community in the Web3 ecosystem. And I can't wait to see what 2021 has in store for all of our friends at Textile, 3box, Berty, and Fleek, and look forward to next year's 2021 IPFS wrap up. Thank you.
Woo! The best community. I agree. Thank you for being part of it. Thanks, Pinata, folks. Again, I think we're sensing a theme here. Projects growing and doing well. Also bringing new folks into the ecosystem, which is great to see. So next, I would like to welcome Danny from 3box talking about proof to production. Welcome.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me here, guys. And I'd echo what everyone else has said. It's awesome to see so many folks who we're building with. And the 2020 journey for us was really about building towards unified Web3 identity and data, which wouldn't be possible with so many other projects here. So I'll try and keep this pretty quick and some high level, some of the most important things we had this year. So January feels like ages ago, I'm sure to everyone, but that was when we really finished out our first suite of products. So complete IPFS-based user and data management suite for developers to build with profiles and messaging and storage, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem, so making it really easy to use decentralized identity and data. And so that kind of wrapped up what we always envisioned as the first set of products. So we were building at $3. We were excited to see a bunch of growth, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem right after that. As soon as we had, especially private messaging, which was the last thing that we shipped in January, growth started taking off. We hit 15,000 end users. And then we always wanted to pull out some of the core identity functionality that was tying Ethereum keys to identities into IPFS-based databases. And starting about this time last year, we had been working on how to do that. And in May, we released the spec for Ceramic Protocol, which I think a lot of you are familiar with. And this was laying out how we envisioned using a bunch of the tech built by Protocol Labs and others to put the key links between keys and identities and data in the public domain. So it was truly decentralized, truly interoperable, completely cross-network, and really easy to leverage across the Web3 stack. While we were doing that, $3 continued to grow faster than we expected at times. In July, we hit 1,000 apps that were built on $3. That has continued to take off since then. But it's been really incredible to see the way that different projects like MetaMask and Gitcoin, Zerion, The Graph, and a whole bunch of others have built using these tools in a whole bunch of different ways, from backup and sync across devices and users without having to rely on a server to interoperable profiles and a bunch of other things. It's just been awesome to see how people put this to use in ways we didn't really envision. Flash forward to September, and we released what we view as kind of the next iteration on decentralized identity across the ecosystem, Identity Index, which is a cross-network decentralized identity standard, again, built on Ceramic Network that lets any key from any blockchain be mapped to any user identity and pointed to any resource, including Textile DBs, Orbit DBs, hosted anywhere. And we've released a alpha library called IDX that people have started building on today to make this happen. In November, we collaborated with Protocol Labs and Textile and the Ethereum Foundation and others on the DAG-Jose standard for signed and encrypted data on IPFS, making it really easy. This has been a pain point for us and a whole bunch of others for quite a while. So this makes it really easy to use encrypted data on IPFS from any wallet, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem with EIP 2844. So really paving the way for IPFS to be a standard for private data in Web3. And then just to share a little preview of what's coming later this month, we're going to be releasing Clay, the ceramic testnet, ahead of a mainnet launch early next year. So we'll keep this community very in the loop on that, but we're very excited to get more and more folks building on ceramic testnet soon. And definitely reach out, a whole bunch of links here. Come drop by our Discord, chat.ceramic.network. We're in there all the time, building everything in the open. We'd love to hear from you guys and build with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Danny, for that update. The encryption work is incredibly important for the ecosystem, and you know, a couple of different groups that you've seen here have been working together on this with us, and it's great to see that move forward. As it's one of the number one things that we hear from developers that they need are strong and easy ways for them to be able to encrypt user content and have the same type of assurances that they have in application development and centralized web as they do in the decentralized web. So it's fantastic to see that moving forward. Next, we're going to hear from Manfred from the Berty project. I had the pleasure of meeting a bunch of folks from the Berty project at IPFS Camp last year, and some really interesting and impressive work on mobile and things like Bluetooth transport for libp2p. So Manfred, looking forward to a couple of updates from you here today on where Berty's at.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So, excuse me. Up. So, hi everyone. I will talk about Berty. So, yes, as Dietrich said, we met last year at IPFS camp with just a demo of what we were doing. And in 2020, we try to extract and learn and make V2, V3 of every component we tested on the first version of the application. So what we do at Berty, we develop a messaging protocol on top of IPFS and P2P against censorship and surveillance. On top of this protocol, we develop a messenger application for mobile and desktop, etc. We have three main challenges. The first one is to use IPFS on mobile devices, so with a very low CPU, bad connectivity, and with a bad life cycle, with the app always in the background. So this is the first main challenge. The second challenge is about having a high level of privacy on top of IPFS, so which is not the top goal of IPFS, and we need to make a lot of things in terms of cryptography and in terms of protocol design to have the smallest possible amount of metadata leaked. And the third challenge is about having a good user experience. So you can't have a valid messaging application if it's too slow, if it's not reliable, etc. This year we released the first version. Excuse me. Yes, this year we released the first version of the protocol. So Berty protocol is a privacy-focused protocol. It allows to manage several devices within an account and to securely communicate with other accounts using groups. You can make groups of one person or multiple person, and each person can have as many devices as wanted. So this is the main focus of this protocol, which is the only way we want to communicate for text messaging attachment. It won't be the way we will do some real-time communication, but for everything, including synchronization between your own devices in terms of configuration to communicate with one contact or to communicate in a group of contacts, you always use the same protocol. Another big step for us was to switch to be fully open source. So we started the project in closed source, and finally we switch, and we now have everything open source from day one. And we recently opened a closed beta to get the first feedback from the community and to improve the application. In terms of things we made more generic and for the community, so we worked on 3 Bluetooth drivers. At the IPFS camp, we only had the first version of one driver, which was the universal driver. And we made a total revamp of this universal driver. So the universal driver is the one that will allow to communicate between any kind of device. You can communicate between Linux and Windows and iOS, Android, etc. It's very low level and have no advanced features, but it allows to communicate between the different ecosystems. We also have an multi-peer connectivity driver, which is the standard in iOS and macOS. So this driver is the same used by the iPhone for sharing files. So it's a mix between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So you can have a very high speed and very good reliability, but only between iOS and macOS. And we made the equivalent thing for Android with Android nearby. So same, you can use Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to communicate with unknown devices at a very high speed. We made the port of OrbitDB and IPFS log in a Go. So go-OrbitDB and go-IPFS log are used by Berty, but they are in a standalone repository. So you can easily use them in your own project. We started recently to develop a Tor transport for P2P. So we already made some tests, and we can communicate between iOS, Android, Linux, macOS, etc. This transport is to enhance the privacy on top of P2P, and particularly to get rid of the metadata leaked with the DHT. So this is something that we plan to make as generic as possible and to maybe included directly in go-ipfs if it's something the community want. And we released the first version of Go Mobile IPFS. So basically, it's the way we are doing mobile application using a full IPFS node. And we released a first generic version, which is shipped on IPFS shipyard organization. Sorry. And for the next year, we plan to go fully public, so to release the application on the stores. We will improve Go Mobile IPFS to make it easier to use and especially to get starting using it. We want to improve the CI of the Go IPFS repository in order to monitor the impact of changes on various devices, especially the mobile devices. We will make our Bluetooth drivers more generic and extract them from our monorepo to allow anyone to use them in their project. And also we'll try to see if we can integrate it directly on the Go IPFS release. I don't know if it will be possible because we need to compile non-Go code. So technically, if we find a solution, it will be amazing. And we will continue in general to improve the overall experience on mobile. A big thank you from the whole Berty team to Protocol Labs, to the IPFS community. And if you have any question, feel free to reach. Thanks.
Thank you, man, for giving us that view into what Berty did this year, and then also what is on the queue for next year. Super exciting stuff. Great to see some of these projects. You know, the investment that it takes and the commitment to be able to do something like portable Bluetooth connections across a transport agnostic protocol. It's really a lot of work. And if you haven't had a chance to read, they have a very long blog post that talks about the troubles and travails of working with Bluetooth. That's great to read. Next, we have Harrison from Fleek, who will be talking to us about what they did this year and what they're going to be doing next year. Hey, Harrison.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, everyone. Like most, I wanted to start by just saying thank you to everyone in the ecosystem and the Protocol Labs and IPFS teams specifically, but also the other presenters and companies building. We entered this ecosystem in March when we launched Fleek. We have thousands of sites now that are deployed through Fleek onto IPFS. And one interesting takeaway is that more than 10% of all sites use ENS. And so even just with like adding features like that, kind of our theme is, you know, people are interested in these technologies. How can we just make really good user experiences and products that make that really easy to do? And so that was one good example of what we're trying to double down on, is just how can we make really good user experiences to like develop products that get these technologies into users' hands super seamlessly and almost in a abstracted way. And so we did the Fleek launch in March. We focused on that for several months, and then we announced our intentions to build Space. And with that, we released the open source Space daemon, which was the backend that we used to build the Space app, which is more of a consumer focused storage product built on IPFS and Textile to start, with some other protocols, Ethereum and Filecoin coming down the road. And again, similar to Fleek, just creating a really good user experience, very familiar with what people are used to, but with these technologies under the hood. So Space will launch the first week of January publicly. We really did focus on the user experience and making sure that it felt like a Web 2 app and experience, but even better. So we feel pretty proud about what we've accomplished and the tech stack we've built it on top of, especially Textile and the IPFS work. So it was great to understand the new things in IPFS and that roadmap, because where we are going is essentially next year is really focused on two things. One is like the Space Daemon. We have a Space SDK we're about to drop in 2 weeks. That's essentially like an upgraded version of the Space Daemon. Everything is broken out into different modules, so it's not all packaged into one thing. It's much easier to work with. But we compare ourselves a lot on the Fleek side to like Netlify, and they pioneered the Jamstack. And basically, like with Space, we view it as kind of an extension of the Jamstack. So we're obviously have to call it Space Jam, but essentially it's a way to add Web3 functionality to Jamstack apps. And so with Space SDK, Space Daemon, Space.js, they're just these libraries that enable people to easily package or add functionality like, peer-to-peer or, Ethereum wallets for authentication or all the cool things you could do with Textile into these like libraries that you could add to a Gatsby site or different sites. But part of where we're going and where Space and Fleek cross is the main big thing we're working on for next year is with Fleek V1, the main, I would say, like thing that's not great about it is it's still centralized to us and our IPFS infrastructure. So with Space, we have a browser and a desktop app. The desktop app has an IPFS node that lives on the user's machine. And so where we're really trying to move with all this Space SDK, these libraries that make it easy to integrate these functionalities, and now with IPFS becoming more natively integrated in browsers and things like that, the idea is to start with the desktop app as a way for the redundancy layer of with Fleek hosting, we use a CDN to make it performant, and then our own IPFS nodes under the hood. So now with Space, what we're essentially going to enable is that an app that's hosted through Fleek will be able to have the option to do a community hosted version where the sites, especially if they use ENS, but even if they don't, users could, through the Space desktop app, search for dApps that they might want to help power or host. And we would essentially handle the automatic updating of the pins every time there's a new deployment. But it's a step in the right direction of like what Netlify has really pioneered is the concept of like not CDN, but ADN, application delivery network, where instead of just putting content on the edge, you put the entire application. And so where we're trying to go with things is really where we see the evolution of that, which is user delivery networks, where not only are you taking advantage of edge infrastructure that's either run by a company like Cloudflare or Netlify or a network like Filecoin, or the retrieval miner layer on top, but also including users in that sort of redundancy and hosting layer, but also eventually in the future in the delivery layer. And so that's why, yeah, like I was saying, these updates to IPFS, making them, work more natively in browsers, having the way to automate the pinning to like other data redundancy layers from the browser. That's all super cool. To start, it would just be with users in the desktop app with those local IPFS nodes, adding to the redundancy, and over time, as we figure out how to handle them doing the delivery and stuff like that, which, we're kind of in the same boat as the community with just seeing how that develops, what's possible, and where it makes sense. Over time, that's the idea, is we'll be able to effectively not only include users in the redundancy aspect of hosting a site and helping power a dApp to really make like decentralized hosting and community powered hosting, but then eventually, working towards how do we also enable more and more of this to be delivered by these users and not so much going through like HTTP and through the CDN. So that's kind of what's on our roadmap for 2021. We did hire a full-time marketer who's recently, you could see we've been making some more noise, sharing what we're doing. So you could expect a lot more of that. But yeah, that's kind of what we're focused on. Again, big thank you for everyone It's an awesome ecosystem. Thank you again to Protocol Labs. And yeah, we're excited for the D-Web to take the main narrative in Web3 in 2021.
Aye to that. Thank you very much, Harrison, for joining, talking about what Fleek's done this year and the plans for the future. Super, super exciting. Especially, I think, as we open up access to IPFS at those edges where users actually operate every day and where those cycles execute, those avenues and opening up those layers becomes a thing that's possible. So it's great to imagine a future where all of the things that we've seen in the projects that are shared with us today come to be, and that future looks closer, closer, and closer. As we're seeing, as people are announcing both the growth in end user adoption, developer adoption, and sophistication in developer workflows and services. So thanks all of our collabs who joined to speak today. Thank you to the work group leads, IPFS, talking about what our teams do, what they did this year, and where we're going next year. Thanks to Molly for kicking us all off with a view into the really, really big things that IPFS and the broader IPFS community achieved this year. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday. And we are looking forward to seeing you next year at the first one of these, sometime TBD, January. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of 2020. I'll see you in 2021.
If we had more time.